Start recording. Okay. Good morning, y'all. We are going to pick up where we left off and keep talking about Russia and the former Soviet Union. So the satellite states of Russia also a little bit. The country, which would be countries around Russia, smaller countries that are kind of in the Russian influence. We talked about physical geography on Monday, and then climate geography yesterday, and climate change in Russia and how that will look in the future. And then today we're just going to examine the cultural makeup of Russia, the people inside of Russia that make it the country that it is. So with no further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's get going. So we've got cultural geography of Russia. Get rid of this. The cultural makeup of the country. Russia is 80% ethnic Russians, so most of the population inside the country is Russian, which you would expect. And there are over 100 separate ethnic groups. Before we get going any further, I feel like it's important to talk about ethnicity, what ethnicity is. Ethnicity is the fact or state of belonging to a social group that has a common national or cultural tradition. For example, if you had family that came from Somalia and they settled in the United States, you would be an American but an ethnic Somalian. So your cultural background is Somali, but you would still be an American. So my ethnicity is Irish because I have Irish ancestry, but I am an American. So that's the idea of ethnicity, right? So Russia has a bunch of these ethnic groups. It's kind of hard to see because it's so small, but this orange is the Russian population. So they're predominantly located in this kind of western region and a little bit of that southern region. Over here we have Ukrainians. So they live in Ukraine, but there are ethnic Ukrainians who live inside of Russia. So they'll speak Ukrainian. They think of themselves as Ukrainians, but they live inside of Russia. There are other people, but Tatars. Tatars are more of an Asian ancestry than the traditional Russians. They're from the southwest side of Russia, which traditionally would be Turkish, kind of. As you can see here, it says Turkic. So they're part of the Turkic ethnic group. They share ancestry with the people of Turkey currently who live there. Azerbaijan, so the Azerbaijanis are very similar. They have a shared culture, and Uzbeks from Uzbekistan. And then in the east, we've got different makeups. Caucasian people living around here, Paleo-Siberian, so people who don't really identify as Russian, they more have a Siberian outlook on the world, more Asian oriented. So there's a lot of different ethnic groups in Russia, and it brings a lot of different kind of things to the table in Russia. Much like the United States, there are problems with systemic racism, systemic prejudice built into the Russian system that kind of favors Russians over people who they call Tatars, which would be more of an Asian ancestry. So much like many modern nations, Russia has a lot of trouble defining who is Russian and what being Russian is. And it leads to a lot of social issues, just like in the United States. So the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union took control of lands. So they were a country much like our own that was built on conquest. The original Russian state just kind of was this smaller area in the west, and they slowly conquered Siberia more and more over a period of a couple hundred years until they reached the Pacific Ocean. And so these areas, these lands are populated with people that aren't traditionally seen as Russian because they were conquered. So the Russians themselves, they'll be called Slavs. Slavs or Slavs. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, so when I have the laser pointer, I have to do this, the pen. So with the pen, we do stuff like that. Sweet. Okay, so we've got the Slavs. Slavs are an ethnic group that include a lot of people. It is traditionally Russians, Polish people are considered Slavs, Ukrainians, so people who live in Ukraine, and then Eastern Europe, it would be people in Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, those types of areas, Lithuania. So they're called Slavs because they have a shared past history, a shared cultural history. Their language is very similar. Their alphabets are very similar. Their religious beliefs are very similar. Eastern Orthodox Christianity is very popular amongst the Slavs. So Eastern Orthodox Christianity will be big in Russia, and not so much Poland. Poland's very Catholic, but Ukraine and many Eastern European countries. And Slavs are without a doubt the most populated, the most populous ethnic group. They have the most people. Second up is the Turks, who generally come from this region. We think of it as Turkey. This is northeast Turkey. Let's see if I can. I keep forgetting I have the pen. So this is Turkey. And then this is the country you will see of Georgia, not to be confused with the state of Georgia. And then Armenia and Azerbaijan are located in this area as well. So there's a lot of little countries there. And those people are Turkic. So they speak a different language than the Russians. They speak a Turkic language. And they are very Muslim. So there's a large Muslim population here. There's a small area in here called Chechnya that is Muslim predominant. And they had a civil war where they tried to break away from the Russian country due to religious reasons, and they eventually lost, but it was a very bloody war, so religion is a pretty touchy subject inside of Russia. And then we have the Tatars. So they are the largest ethnic group, the largest Turkic ethnic group, and they're from Tatarstan. A lot of the places around here are just named Stan at the end: Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Tatarstan. The list goes on. So a lot of stands in this area of in the world. And you can see what we're talking about right here. This little area in southwestern Russia. This is where the Tatars come from. They are a very large group within Russia. And then we have Caucasian. So this is from the Caucasus Mountains. So we're looking at Turkey. That's what country this is. So earlier when we were looking up at this area. That's where Georgia and Azerbaijan and stuff is. That's where the Caucasus Mountains are located. The mountains are kind of up in this area. And Muslims, so there's a lot of Muslims in the Caucasian culture as well. And they share common language and culture and customs. So lots of Islam in Russia. It's the second largest religion. So we're going to talk a little bit about Russian population now. How far have I gone? I feel like I've been rambling. 9 minutes. We're going to go a little bit further than normal today just because I want to get through a couple more of these slides. So we've got Russia, 6th most populated in the world. Its climate and land limit the population. There's not a lot. You can't really live out in the east very well. So most of the Russian population lives in the west. 75% of the country lives in the west. So pretty big amount, 3/4 of the people in the small area. Eastern Russian climate is harsh, not easy to live. So the Soviet era, so that's like 1920 to about 1980, or we'll even say 1990. So that's, a good 70-year span. Ethnic Russians began to settle in non-ethnic Russian areas. So they kind of redistributed the population, hoping to make people more Russian. You know, if you had more Russians move into town, maybe people will start acting more Russian, and it will kind of all work itself out, and everyone will become Russian. Well, it didn't really work out very well. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, so many of the Russians ended up going back home because they were no longer being subsidized by their government. So nobody was paying for them. Nobody paid for them, so they go home. So there's a lot of ghost cities in Soviet Union that used to have people in them, but no longer do. And the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, areas like Russia and Ukraine, and many other countries, they have very poor health care. They have high death rates and low birth rates because of the dire economic situation. Not a lot of people can afford to have kids. So it's causing a pretty big population issue inside of Russia. Their population is diminishing; it's not growing. So they're trying to work out ways to turn that around. Their education, Russia has 100% literacy. Whoops. There we go. I love this. I love my new pen. Excuse me. Oh, God, I had something catch my throat. Okay, so 100% of Russians are literate. All of them can read. They did a very good job with that. Their education is really good. Sciences and technology are more important than art, so it gets more funding, just much like in the United States. But teachers get very low pay. Schools are very poor conditions. And so earning money is a high priority for education. So it's really become privatized recently. So you got to pay to get a good education, and the public system kind of sucks. Okay, so we're going to run through these next ones here quick. Religion. Eastern Orthodoxy is the religion of Russia mostly, right? It's not a state religion. They don't have state religion, just like the United States. Once in 1917, when the communists took over, they made it atheist. So the state religion was atheism. They were against all religions. But Eastern Orthodoxy survived the communists. They weren't able to eradicate it, and it is very popular today. As well as Roman Catholics or Protestants. They're not nearly as popular as the Orthodox in Russia, but they still exist. And the government restricts non-Eastern Orthodox Christian groups, so there can only be so many Catholic churches, so many Catholic priests, that kind of stuff. They want to keep Western influence as low as possible. Islam is the second largest religion in Russia, and it is in the southern area. And then we have Jews. Jews are, they've always been a really popular part of Russia. There's always been a lot of Jews in Russia. And they often have dealt with anti-Semitism. The Tsars would limit where they could live. They would often organize attacks on the Jews they'd blame the Jews for like a famine that would happen. And when there was no food, they would say it was because of the Jews. So the peasants would attack the Jews. The Soviets also went after the Jews. They would lock them into internment camps, much like the Germans, except for the Russians weren't exterminating the Jews. They were just trying to keep them, locked away. So they did lock them up into internment camps, but they did not genocide them like the Germans. So that's important to know. And the Jews have mostly emigrated. They've mostly left Russia in the Soviet Union era because of the persecution, but there's still a few Jews left in Russia today. And there's a little bit of Buddhism. You can see really right here on the very southern edges. And yeah, just right there. The very southern edge is a little bit Buddhist. So just a couple of spots, not very popular at all. And smoking and drinking are common in Russia. They drink a lot. They smoke a lot. Diseases are very common. It's extremely cold in Russia, which makes everything a little bit more dreary. And they have a very poor healthcare system. All right, so thanks for sticking with me, you guys. Sorry it got so long. We finish it up. We talked about the ethnicities of Russia, and next we'll start talking about their art, culture, and their daily lives. What's it like to be Russian? So thanks for watching, y'all. Have a great day.